Hi, I'm Lisa Prather, and welcome to The Voice of Health with our host, Dr. Robert Prather of the Prather Practice, where lives are changed every day through the natural approach to healthcare. Well, we're talking today about Graves' disease, or hyperthyroid.
Yes, it's the Graves' disease. It's an autoimmune condition that causes hyperthyroid, and almost all hyperthyroid conditions are Graves' disease.
Our Graves' disease.
Right.
And Dr. Prather, you had Graves' disease, isn't that correct?
I did.
You want to tell us a little bit about that? What were your symptoms?
Right. Well, I had that for 4 years when I was young. And was able to get over that. But my symptoms that were associated with a hyperthyroid was I had weight loss. So I was going in my freshman year in high school at 175, and I graduated from high school weighing 145.
Which is not good weight loss.
No, it was not. At 175, I had like 10% body fat. So it was a definite problem for me. It also stopped any growth. After I got over the Graves' disease, I grew an inch, and that was when I was in my 20s, like 20 at that point. And I had shaking, tremors that was associated with that. I had increased appetite. I remember...
But yet you were losing weight.
But I was losing weight because I would burn up, all the food so quickly. I had difficulty thinking. My thought process wasn't as what it should be. It created a lot of emotional type of issues. I had increased pressure in the eyes, which they had noticed. I also had an enlargement of my thyroid, which was noticeable. And also had increased blood pressure. So all those things were some of the symptoms that I had going on.
And what was the age range that you...
I actually developed it about the age of 15 and then got over it just before I turned 20. Okay. Which is unusual.
Now, do you know what caused your Graves' disease?
Yeah, I had a very interesting incident. I was required to get a vaccination that everybody was at this party who had been exposed to a gentleman who had gone to Vietnam and come back. And he had been exposed to some type of disease, and everyone had to get a vaccination. So I got my vaccination, and the next morning, I had a gray streak in my hair. And it was after that I soon developed the symptoms of the Graves' disease and then had it diagnosed. And one of the things is if you have a autoimmune reaction like that, Graves' disease, where it's all of a sudden, that's one of the signs that you have is a gray streak in your hair. Oh, and it also caused premature graying that's why I developed the premature gray hair, is because of the Graves' disease. That's one of the things that occur.
Interesting. So what usually causes Graves' disease?
Well, Graves' disease is an autoimmune disease, and it can be kicked off by quite a few things. An infection is a very common reason for Graves' disease. So some of the things that can occur with that is the mumps virus can kick it off. There's also a parasite called Leishmaniasis that can kick that off. So there are some different types of infections that can kick it off. There can also be any type of immune stress. For me, it was a vaccination that kicked it off. So that's one thing that could be something that initiates it. It can also be food allergies. Is a very common type of reason for the autoimmune condition to start up. So those are some of the things that are normally cause that.
Now, is there a genetic component to Graves' disease?
They have found that there is a genetic component. They haven't been able to find the gene that's associated with that. But if you do have family members who have had Graves' disease in the past, then you're more likely to develop Graves' disease. So that is one thing to be aware of and something that can be an issue.
Now, in your family, was there anybody that you knew of?
There was no one that I knew of that had Graves' disease in my family.
So how did you feel when you had it?
Well, I was very fatigued. I didn't really know what was going on. My immune system was much weaker, so I hardly get anything. I hardly got sick at all before the Graves' disease, and I've really never gotten that sick since, as you'd well know.
Yes.
But during that time, I was constantly getting illnesses. during that time. Also, it was very confusing because I really didn't understand it. No one really explained to me a lot of the symptoms. But I was a straight A student, and my grades definitely dropped. One of the things is I would come home and I would forget any of my homework. What I was supposed to do. It was a lot of things that
you
just
couldn't
weren't
blame it on the dog.
Yeah, no, I just blamed it on the Graves' disease. It definitely has affected my sports. I was a excellent 3-sport athlete. As a freshman, I was actually playing for some varsity on the football team, and as a running back, and I was a sprinter and a wrestler. And after I got the Graves' disease, all my sports abilities just dropped. I was a better athlete as a freshman, and more likely to start on starting on the varsity football team as a freshman than I was as a senior because of
that
my
must have been
weight
tough.
loss.
I mean, just not feeling well when you're that young.
Right.
Yeah. But it had a lot to do with why you went into healthcare.
Yes. As I was able to get over that, there were several things, that they were suggesting that I do. There's medication that can be taken to help to control that. And then there was also radioactive iodine and then also surgery. I wasn't responding well to anything, and basically they were talking about, for me, doing the radioactive iodine. But there was an awful lot of side effects, long-term types of issues that could be involved. It could even cause some sterility. So it wasn't really something that I felt was really best for me. And most of the people that I have known who've either had the surgery or had the radioactive iodine, you're never the same. You're never able to get back to where you normally were. It also affected my parathyroid quite a bit, where my lungs and my arteries had actually calcified. So when they did an x-ray of my lungs, you could actually see the entire lungs. So it also caused a lot of breathing problems for me too.
So going through that has to be very difficult. And I know when patients come in and they're talking about how they're feeling, you know how it feels to be very ill.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, with the calcification of the lungs, doctor had told me that I wouldn't live past the age of 35. That
So
this was something that really, and with the whole treatment, medical treatment, none of that would have really been taken care of.
Yeah.
So looking at what needed to be done at that point, that's when I decided to try to fix the problem, and found people who were doing the same type of work I do, and then were able to get my condition under control. After I started treatment, got things under control, within 3 months I grew an inch and went from 145 up to 200 pounds.
Yeah. And as your wife, I can say you're fertile.
and all the guys at college all thought I had started doing steroids. They were like, "What did you do?" Because all of a sudden I went from
I got healthy.
Yeah, I went from 145 up to 200 pounds in just a couple months over the summer. And I had all sorts of muscles that I didn't have before, and it was like, what the heck happened to you?
When you were going through this, didn't you say they'd come down, your buddies would come down and watch you in the cafeteria at the dorm because you would eat a dozen donuts in one sitting?
Well, yeah, I would have several different meals, and yeah, I would drink a gallon.
Your mom sent you to eat at the dorm. It was probably a lot cheaper.
It was. I drink a gallon of milk a day.
Wow. When we come back, we're going to talk about Graves' disease, who usually gets Graves' disease, and the different treatments for it. We'll be right back. You can win a free 60-minute massage in a relaxing spa at the Prather practice. Each month, we have a drawing to give away a free massage to one of our lucky Facebook and Twitter fans. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter on our website at thevoiceofhealthradio.com. This is The Voice of Health with Dr. Robert Prather. The Voice of Health Wellness Tip with Dr. Robert Prather of the Prather Practice. What conditions can be helped with acupuncture?
Well, of course, the sinusitis, tinnitus. We've had some very severe cases of that came in and had some excellent results. Toothache is excellent. PMS, menopausal symptoms. I have many women who are coming in saying, I've heard that it's excellent for hot flashes. Did some acupuncture, and they said, wow, I'm sold. Mm-hmm. Just because of the changes that occur with that. Headaches, migraines, acupuncture is an excellent adjunctive to that. Parkinson's disease. I have patients who are coming in with Parkinson's.
Oh, yes.
And actually getting some very excellent results.
You can see their gait gets better.
Sure. There are certain points that we do that are specifically have been shown to be very effective for Parkinson's. I know the National Institute of Health is doing some research on that right now with some very excellent results. I've gotten the points from their research that they've done, started to implement them, and I have definitely found that that's been extremely helpful. Mm-hmm. Stroke, post-stroke, we can get some very good results on that. Mm-hmm. Cancer patients. A very interesting study that they did on people who were going through chemo radiation, that they had 80% fewer complaints if they were doing acupuncture. Mm. So
when they were going through
it. Also afterwards, there are problems with the nervous system afterwards. All addictions, cigarette smoking, we have a lot of people coming in for that, but acupuncture, specifically working on also some ear points along with that, along with the needle points on the body, actually can have some very, very significant improvement on really almost any addiction. I have a patient who came in just to try acupuncture, was actually in law school, and a lot of stress, a lot of things involved with that. And he just keeps on coming in because he says, I do so much better in school. I'm able to concentrate better, I'm able to relax, it just makes such a difference. There was a gal, whenever she was going through the whole CPA program to get certified, and every time she takes tests, she comes in for acupuncture.
Before the test? Or after?
She says it's better than Valium, just to, kind of keep everything nice and calm, and I can think great.
Schedule your appointment at the Prather Practice, 317-848-8048. That's 317-848-8048. Or learn more on our website at thevoiceofhealthradio.com. The Prather Practice, restoring hope.
And I'm feeling good.
You're listening to The Voice of Health with Dr. Robert Prather of the Prather Practice, the most comprehensive wellness center in the Midwest. We're talking today about Graves' disease or hyperthyroid. And Dr. Prather, who usually gets Graves' disease?
Well, usually it's more females than males by quite a bit. About 3 times as many females as males get it. Mm-hmm. It's also usually between the ages of 18 and 40, when women are usually more fertile, hormonal changes taking place. That's a more common time that people get Graves' disease.
Did Mrs. Bush have Graves' disease?
Yes. Mm-hmm. Now, interestingly enough, the Bushes, so George, his wife, and their dog all developed Graves' disease. Yes.
Oh, I remember that dog.
Right. And they all 3 developed Graves' disease, and it was like, what the heck is going on?
Yeah.
But they found out that the White House had mercury in the water, mercury and lead.
Really?
So the tap water was actually the culprit. Mm-hmm. So they had to go in there and take out all the water plumbing and replace it. Oh. But they all got treated for Graves' disease.
Oh,
so they were all on George Bush, his wife, and the dog were all on methimazole, which is the drug to get the Graves' disease under control.
I knew she had it, but I didn't realize.
Yeah, George Bush had it too, and their dog had it.
That dog. What was the name of that dog? I remember.
But that kind of shows up how toxins can be involved.
Yeah.
with kicking off Graves' disease, and it could be quite a few different types of things. For them, it was heavy metals.
Mm-hmm. I noticed it. Was it in her eyes? You could tell. Is there an effect on the eyes?
Yes, there's increased pressure behind the eyes.
So it's almost like they bug out.
They kind of bug out with that, and that's one of the things that can occur. So I didn't have that extreme. It's not everyone who gets that extreme, but it does always increases eye pressure.
Okay.
And that was one thing that they were monitoring on me.
So do you still have Graves' disease?
I do not. I've been cured of it and have no signs of the Graves' disease.
And yeah, by the time I met you, you were cured of it.
Right.
Yeah. So, how do you get over, how did you get over your Graves' disease?
Well, there were several things that were involved in that. Chiropractic, dietary change, finding out what food allergies, because that was a big part of it, and then boosting my immune system. So the combination of those things, I saw a dramatic change.
And we talk over and over again in our show on cancer is just how important building that immune system is.
It really is. And whenever you're talking about autoimmune diseases, approaching it from two different ways. You can either weaken the immune system to try to get that under control, or you can rebuild the immune system. It's always autoimmune diseases. Now, they always talk about an overactive immune system. The only reason that you have an overactive immune system is because the immune system has been compromised. For the Bushes, it was heavy metals. For me, it was a vaccination that caused it. It can be an infection for other people. It can even be high levels of stress or imbalances in the hormone system. But there's a lot of things that can kick that off. Food allergies. But it's basically looking at a compromised immune system that causes the underlying problem. And if you can find ways to fix the immune system, then you can get people back on track and get them actually over the autoimmune disease. And
there's hope.
Yeah, that's the difference in the structure function versus disease care.
Well, let's talk about what is the medical treatment for Graves' disease.
Well, they use the basic one is a drug called methimazole. And it has a very high effective rate, but it doesn't work on everyone. I've had quite a few people who came in who've tried the drug, and then you take it for a period of time, and then you see if the body is kind of relaxed and it can go back to its normal. Now, there are some side effects that can come about from methimazole, because I have a lot of patients who don't do well with it. Skin rash, nausea, loss of taste, loss of hair, aplastic anemia are some of the things that can occur with that. So there's oftentimes some problems taking that particular drug. The other thing that you can do is take beta blockers, because they help quite a bit with the symptomatology. And then, of course, radioactive iodine, which is the route that they wanted to go on me. And then also surgery. But one of the things that occurs is you also take out the parathyroid, so the calcium balance in the body is always off and causes a huge amount of health issues.
Yeah, so when you say surgery, they're removing the thyroid.
Yes.
Okay. So why did you try structure function care for your Graves' disease?
Well, one of the things is that the results just weren't working going through the doctors. I really didn't like.
Did you try the medication?
I did, just for a little bit, and I felt horrible. And they also were saying that it really wasn't working for me. The numbers were actually going up. So I was trying a few other different types of things and looking at that. One of the things is they thought that I would get over it until they figured out that it was actually starting to cause some calcification in my body, because it was also affecting the parathyroid. So it was mine was definitely more complicated. And even as they said that they were going to use the radioactive iodine, they really didn't they expected the Graves' disease to stop, but the side problems would have continued. So, in other words, they weren't really giving me a whole lot of hope or good outcomes in what I was looking at. So I wasn't really satisfied and really decided to go elsewhere and try another route.
Okay. So what is the difference in outcome and philosophy on structure function care and the disease care model?
Well, the disease care model, what you're not really trying to cure the situation. What you're trying to do is control the symptoms. And when you're talking about Graves' disease, it is a symptom because it's really the malfunctioning immune system that's off. So you're really not trying to, when you're talking about dealing with an autoimmune disease through disease care or pharmaceuticals, you're not really trying to cure the underlying problem. And the underlying problem is a compromised, malfunctioning immune system. And what they're trying to do through pharmaceuticals is just control the symptoms, not really getting to the root of the problem. Whereas with structure function care, what you're trying to do is get to the root of the problem and fix the immune system so that now you have a normal functioning immune system and a healthy body.
Yeah.
So, it's a totally different type of philosophy and a totally different outcome. Oftentimes, after you go through the disease care model with controlling the symptoms, your immune system is even worse off than it was before.
And like you said, if they had done the surgery, they have, do they usually have to take the parathyroid?
It is embedded into the thyroid.
And that causes
that causes a whole another set of problems, and it really doesn't get to the root of the problem. And of course, most of the people that come in to see me have already had those things done, and most of them wish that they had tried to do it naturally.
So what are you doing for them? Are you able to help them?
We are still able to help them, even though that they've had the damage already done to the thyroid. But we do try to work with that and get them as healthy as they can. So you can always help in those types of situations, but it's not as good as if you had started out from the very beginning and working at it with it completely naturally.
Yeah, because I know we see a lot of people with thyroid issues.
And quite a few.
So probably have prevented, been able to help people so they don't need the surgery.
Oh, yes. We have a very high success rate of Graves' disease and with also low thyroid, Hashimoto's, autoimmune. So we have some very good results along those lines and really try to get to the root of the problem and then fix it.
Okay. Well, let's talk about diagnostics. What are the diagnostics for Graves' disease?
Well, it's once we see that the thyroid isn't working correctly, we can actually do an autoimmune thyroid panel and show up that the Graves' disease is occurring. So the first off is oftentimes I'll feel the thyroid on examination. We can feel that it's enlarged. You shouldn't be able to feel the thyroid. If it is enlarged, then there's always something that isn't working.
And you shouldn't be able to see it.
And you shouldn't be able to see it.
I know we're in different places, out in public, and you'll see someone and say, "Oh, she's got thyroid issues." Or,
sure.
Yeah.
And oftentimes it's interesting because the thyroid conditions are very much underreported. So I sit there and I say, "Oh, that thyroid is enlarged." They say, I know. I've noticed that before, and they've commented on it, did the blood work, and they said everything was fine. And I said, oh, really? Let me take a look at the blood work. And I look at the blood work, and it's not fine. What they're looking for is whether it can be treated with medication or surgery. And if it's not too bad, then they don't worry about it. So we look, even with structure function care, we look at things in a totally different way than you do in disease care. So in disease care, what you're looking for is, does someone need surgery or does someone need pharmaceuticals? If not, then you're fine. Whereas we're looking at it and saying, there are perfect numbers that should be occurring. For the thyroid stimulating hormone, a perfect number should be 2.5. For a T4, it should be 8.0 to 8.5. For the free thyroxine, it should be 1.5. And those numbers really shouldn't vary. And we have people with some, they're not quite ready for surgery, but their numbers are, 9 or 10 on
Yeah.
the T4, and that's hyperthyroid, or they're down in the 4s or 5s, and they say, oh, but we don't really need to do medication at that point, so it's fine.
Wow.
And it's not fine.
No.
It's not working properly. So we work on it, get it back up to where it could be. And oftentimes we'll say, well, let's do an autoimmune thyroid because that's not working correctly, and show up an autoimmune thyroid that no one's ever even bothered to test.
That's the blood work.
That's the blood work.
Mm-hmm.
So we're finding people with Graves' disease and low-function Hashimoto's, oftentimes where they've been going to doctors for quite a while saying, hey, I've got problems, I don't know what's wrong, but I'm not feeling well. And the doctor does the blood work and says, you're fine, here, take an antidepressant, you must be crazy. Mm. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. That it's something that's wrong with you, but mentally, not physically, whereas actually it is physical.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, when we come back, more on Graves' disease.
Listen to the Voice of Health Radio on your smartphone or tablet on all of the top radio apps available. TuneIn Radio, Stitcher, and iHeartRadio. You can find these apps and more on our website at thevoiceofhealthradio.com. This is The Voice of Health with Dr. Robert Prather. Laughter is the best medicine.
They say laughter is the best medicine, and it is after you've received real medicine from a real medical professional. Prior to that, you don't want any laughter. You don't want a doctor giggling during an exam. Oh my gosh, this is your body? Oh, nice man boobs. It's got to be hard to work in a hospital. That hospital lighting, everyone looks sick in that hospital lighting. I walked in, they're like, we should get you to the ER. I'm just here to see my wife. Well, you have jaundice. See, compared, oh my gosh, I have jaundice too. We all have jaundice.
The Voice of Health Minute with Dr. Robert Prather of the Prather Practice. Dr. Prather, you talk a lot about structure function care and disease care. What is the difference?
When the body's in a crisis and is no longer able to heal itself, that's when disease care is critical. That's where you actually utilize the pharmaceuticals and the surgical methods. What we're usually involved with is in structure function. As opposed to a disease care, it's health care. Everything that you use in a structure function standpoint is something to bring the body back into homeostasis, which is balance. Homeostasis as the definition of health. If the body can maintain homeostasis, where it's in a perfect balance with all the different types of things that are coming in that are interfering with its function, that is the perfect state of health, and that's based on a balance of the physiology, functional, and upon the structure portion of the structure function.
Schedule your appointment at the Prather Practice, 317-848-8048. The Prather Practice, Restoring Hope. A special message from the DTS Weight Loss Center at the Prather Practice.
Are you tired of making the same weight loss resolution only to end up right back where you started? Let the professionals at DTS Weight Loss Center take all the frustration out of dieting. Our nutritionists and wellness coaches know what works for every body type and can develop a plan specific to your needs throughout your medically supervised program. Make the change by visiting us online at dtsweightlosscenter.com. Dedicate, transform, succeed.
When you call the Prather Practice to schedule your appointment at our DTS Weight Loss Center, mention the Voice of Health radio show and you'll receive a free initial consultation, plus a free body composition analysis. 317-848-8048. That's 317-848-8048. The DTS Weight Loss Center at the Prather Practice. Dedicate, transform, succeed.
Disease. And Dr. Prather, we're talking about diagnostics. You talked about we do extensive blood work, the Prather profile they actually call it, and then if there's thyroid issues, recommend an autoimmune thyroid panel. That's also blood work. Well, what other diagnostics are important?
Well, it's also important to do the hormone panels because the progesterone, testosterone, estrogen all play a role. Because not only do you have to produce the proper amounts, but then they have to be converted. And there's an interrelationship between the other hormones and thyroid and whether it's converted into a usable form. You also need to do an iodine test. Oftentimes we'll sit there and find people who are iodine deficient, though their thyroid numbers are fine. With the iodine deficiency, it's causing all the symptoms of a low thyroid. Mm-hmm. So getting that all worked out is important. Also, what's going on in the gut. If people are having a leaky gut syndrome, then that shows up in the food allergies, starts to kick in, which is one of the main reasons that you can get autoimmune diseases. 80% of all autoimmune diseases start in the gut. We also have to check on the hair analysis, see if there's heavy metal toxicities or imbalances in the minerals. It took them almost 2 years to figure out what was wrong with the bushes. And they have the top doctors in the world working on it, and then they finally figured out that they had Graves' disease. And at first they told them it was just because of some type of hereditary types of problems you just developed. But then when the dog got it too, it's like, there might be something else going on.
Something in the environment.
Might be environmental. So looking at heavy metal toxicities is an important thing. Also looking at infections and really checking out the body thoroughly. So anytime we find someone after we find out the blood work is, it's an autoimmune, well, why is it? Is it coming from the gut? Is it coming from the immune system? Is it coming from toxicities, heavy metals? So doing all the proper tests to find the underlying cause is an important part of the cure.
It can be combination too.
Sure.
Right.
Well, I mean, one of the things is that they had started them all out on the drug, and it wasn't responding. Mm-hmm. It wasn't until they took them away and started to, they actually did chelation on them to get rid of the heavy metal, that they actually started to get improvement on the bushes. Mm-hmm. So, again, looking for the cause.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. So you talked about the importance of the gut. So why do a stool kit then? Is that something?
Yeah, because as you do a stool kit, it really tells you a tremendous amount. One, you can see any of the infections that are going on. Mm-hmm. Oftentimes, there can be a parasitic, a bacterial infection that's causing some of the problems that are associated with that. Mm-hmm. You can pick up that there's an immune stress. High immunoglobulin A is a sign that you've got a leaky gut syndrome. You can also have problems with pancreatic enzymes. You can have too high of fats in the gut because the gallbladder is not working right. Mm. There's a tremendous amount that shows up in there that finding out 80% of the immune system's around the gut, and from the National Institute of Health has been doing a tremendous amount of studies on the biogenome in the gut, and they say that, they confirmed almost all autoimmune diseases start in the gut, and that's one of the major problems that we have going on. Mm-hmm. So really looking at the gut is very critical, especially with all the health problems that we have now in the world. And if people aren't really analyzing the gut, you can't possibly figure out how to cure people unless you go to the gut.
Mm. And so why is food allergy test important? Are you talking about food allergies here or food, intolerances?
Yeah, you're actually talking about an immune response, because what the body does is it makes an antibody that is thyroid stimulating. And as you hit that, then the body starts to overproduce but it's directly related to the food allergies. It's a type 4 allergy reaction to food.
Interesting.
That actually kicks up. I don't want to get too in-depth on how the whole process goes, because I'll lose everybody. Mm-hmm. But there's a very specific pathway that produces the autoimmune reaction. And food is very, very critical to understand how that interrelates, and finding out exactly what food allergies, because it is actually food allergies that affect that. And it's not inherited, it's acquired food allergies. And there is a big difference. And
that's something you do at the Prather practice?
That is something that we do at the Prather practice.
Okay. And you talked a little bit about the hair analysis. So what role does hair analysis play?
Well, one of the big things with Graves' disease is checking for heavy metals. Mercury is well known to cause Graves' disease. Also, lead also plays a big role in that. So checking on both of those is very important. Also, if you get copper imbalances, that can also affect the thyroid quite a bit. So checking on those different types of aspects is important. So hair analysis is always critical with any type of a thyroid condition, and especially an autoimmune condition.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about, you said when you had your Graves' disease, a chiropractic helped tremendously. Why is a chiropractic evaluation important for Graves' disease?
Well, one of the things that we find is that the nerves coming from the neck, C1 and C2 and C5 specifically.
And those are the top three, the cervical.
Up in the in the cervical vertebrae, up in the neck, goes and innervates the thyroid. And one of the things that we found is if there's a pinched nerve, you can't really ever get a thyroid fixed. If you also have thyroid problems, you'll never get the neck fixed.
Interesting, yeah.
So they play hand in hand. So people come into me and saying, I can't, or I even get referrals from other Atlas Orthogonists, which is specialty in the neck. And they say, I'm not getting this patient won't hold their adjustment in their neck. Well, we do a blood test and find out that their thyroid isn't working right, and we get their thyroid working right, and then the neck starts to hold. We find people who don't respond well, can't get their thyroid under control, even with medication. And once we fix the neck, all of a sudden, now the what we're working on and how we're treating, all of a sudden the thyroid's working. So
it's so important because the nervous
system tells all the other organs what to do. And so obviously if you don't have your control center working correctly, how do you expect the organ to work? So the nervous system is important for every aspect of the body to work correctly. So getting those nerve interferences cleared up has a huge effect on the organs, but the organs also have a reverse effect on. That's why it doesn't really work as well if you're just doing structural care or functional care. You have to do both structure and function to really get the body working correctly.
And that's what we do at the Prather practice.
And that's what we do at the Prather practice.
Structure function care.
Right.
Well, and with Graves' disease, when you got that specific chiropractic adjustment, like you're board certified in the Atlas Orthogonal,
right?
Didn't you sleep for hours after? It just had.
I was just out and had immediate changes in my whole in how I was feeling, in my blood work. Everything started to turn around at that point.
Interesting. What about the role of acupuncture? How does acupuncture play in the role of Graves' disease? And
there are specific points that are related to the thyroid. So as acupuncture works on the electromagnetic system, and so acupuncture has a very definite effect on the thyroid. And one of the things that I've found is I've had trouble getting some of the thyroids under control. We did the adjustment, we did the nutritional work, hit all the things that were right. But one of the things that was missing was hitting the acupuncture points for that. Because again, it's a holistic type of a system. And acupuncture is one of the major aspects of how the body works. The electromagnetic energy of the body. So as soon as we did the acupuncture, all of a sudden we started to get the changes in the thyroid levels.
Interesting. Yeah, I love acupuncture.
Everything works together. Everything works in tandem. And you can't sit there and separate the body out into a mechanistic type of where it's divided up, where you're only dealing with the thyroid, everything is interrelated and everything works together. So looking at it as a holistic type of a process is where we really shine through and can really make the big differences.
And because we've been fearfully and wonderfully made.
Absolutely.
All right, when we come back, more on Graves' disease.
Never miss an episode of The Voice of Health so that you can stay informed and empowered about your health. Get a podcast of our show automatically delivered to you every week by signing up for our show on iTunes. You can find that link on our website at thevoiceofhealthradio.com. And don't forget, thevoiceofhealthradio.com has complete archives of all of our past episodes with an audio library of information to help you add more life to your years and more years to your life. This is The Voice of Health with Dr. Robert Prather. The Voice of Health Wellness Tip with Dr. Robert Prather of the Prather Practice. What is auricular therapy, Dr. Prather?
Auricular therapy is where you're using the ear to make some changes throughout the body. Auricular therapy usually refers to electrical stimulation of the ear, and there can be a huge amount of changes that have occurred. I had a patient who had fibromyalgia, had it for years and years. We had been able to get their system balanced out, but they still had pain. We went to the auricular therapy, and after a week of treatment, the patient had been on 3 different medications for pain, was able to eliminate them all. It was a life changer. What we're trying to do along those lines is to change the perception of the brain on what's happening into the body. There are times where we can relieve the pain that someone has. In other words, there's an underlying cause for the pain that's actually occurring, and you can eliminate the underlying cause and people can still have pain or disease in different types of areas. Why is that? If you've had pain for a long, long period of time, the pain fibers become very used to sending that pain information even when the offending problem is no longer there. So when we actually look at using auricular therapy is when it's no longer a problem in the area, but it's actually more of a problem in the brain. So auricular therapy, we're actually thinking more on balancing out, normalizing the electrical impulses of the brain. The brain actually has a holographic image of you inside of there. And the body might have a false image. And
especially if it's been in pain for a while.
Especially if it's been pain and disease for a long period of time, it actually gets used to that. And the brain will actually fight changing that holographic image because it's become used to it. The interesting thing about auricular therapy, people who said, I've tried everything, nothing works at this point, those are usually the people that show up the best for the auricular therapy.
Why is that? Because nothing has really treated the brain, per
because,
se?
Yes, nothing has worked on the imaging of the brain. There is no other type of treatment. Pharmaceutical, nothing along those lines will treat that imaging of the brain. The ones that have no hope, have been everywhere, tried everything, that's usually when you find auricular therapy very, very dramatic, and you can get some amazing changes.
Schedule your appointment at the Prather Practice, 317-848-8048. That's 317-848-8048. Or learn more on our website at thevoiceofhealthradio.com. The Prather Practice, restoring hope.
It's a beautiful day. Sky falls, you feel like it's a beautiful day. So let it get away.
You're listening to The Voice of Health with Dr. Robert Prather of the Prather Practice, where our mission is restoring hope to our patients.
We're talking today about Graves' disease, hyperthyroid. And Dr. Prather, we're talking on the treatments, the structure function model, which we follow at the Prather Practice. Talked about the parts of chiropractic, the nervous system, acupuncture. Let's talk about the role of homeopathy and what role it plays in treating Graves' disease.
Homeopathy is one of the best ways to treat Graves' disease. Sort of our secret weapon in almost every condition that we treat. It's where we really see the miracles, and it's definitely true of the Graves' disease. That's one of the things that we really hit hard is homeopathic to get that under control. We have several homeopathics that are well known to help with Graves' disease. Lycopus is probably one of the better known ones. Lycopus virginicus, thyroidein, Spongiatosta, One of the ones that is especially good is something called ephedra. Now, in a homeopathic form, it actually settles down the thyroid. In a herbal form, it stimulates the thyroid. So there was some famous cases where people were taking large amounts of ephedra because it's a stimulant. They would use it for weight loss, which is extremely effective. It's excellent for clearing up sinuses also. And it gets people, very alert and very high level. There was a Major League Baseball player that died from taking too much ephedra during a game. He had overdosed, and there were some people who were doing that also for weight loss. So they took that off the market. So ephedra mahuang is pretty much illegal to sell. But in a homeopathic form, it's one of the better things that you can possibly use for settling down the thyroid, reducing the thyroid numbers and a lot of the symptoms.
So it's not like a stimulant when
it's a homeopathic, it works actually opposite.
Interesting.
So that's one of the things that occurs when you're dealing with homeopathics, is they have an opposite effect most of the time. Pituitary gland, iodum purum, calcarea carbonicum, natrum muriaticum, burita carbonicum, arsenicum iodatum. That's just a few of
I am impressed how you can say all that.
of the homeopathics. There's actually 200 homeopathics that are known to help to settle down the thyroid.
200.
So what we will do is go through and check out each one of those and see which ones work the best for someone, then combine them together to get the best effect. So we can get some excellent results with the homeopathic remedies.
Oh, I know that personally. The homeopathy is,
quite amazing.
Right. Wonderful. Now, what about herbals? Can they be helpful?
Very, very important herbals are. Lemon balm leaf is one of the best known hyperthyroid medications out there. It's been around, used for thousands of years of settling down the thyroid, and extremely effective. Coleus root is also excellent. Motherwort, Adonis vernalis. Centauri, which is a Bach flower remedy, is known to deal with the emotional aspects of the thyroid, which has a huge effect on that. Sometimes emotional stress is one of the big things that kicks off a thyroid condition. In those types of conditions, Centauri is absolutely essential to be able to get it back under control. Damiana is fantastic for settling down the thyroid. Irish moss, indigo is really, really excellent for the thyroid also, hyperthyroid conditions. It will actually raise up the parathyroid and lower the thyroid.
And what I like is, there's no guesswork. We're able to check specifically what helps that one person, because
Correct.
everybody is different.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about what role does nutrition play in the Graves' disease.
Yeah. Nutraceuticals, nutritions are very, very important on that. One of the big things that settles down Graves' disease hyperthyroid is B17. Remember we had the big thing on
I do,
B17?
but I don't remember what B17 was.
Well, it's Laetrile is what it's well known, or amygdalin. So that's used quite a bit for cancer, but it's also excellent for settling down the hyperthyroid condition. And the other thing that goes along with that is cruciferous plants. Those are the things that are cabbage, broccoli, Brussels sprouts, and cauliflower. And the big thing that cruciferous vegetables have is they have high B17 or amygdalin in it. So,
can you repeat those again?
Sure.
Yeah.
Cabbage, broccoli, Brussels sprouts, and cauliflower. They all suppress the thyroid. So if you're hypothyroid, you don't want to eat those things because it lowers it. But cruciferous vegetables are very good for fighting cancer. That's what Laetrile is well known for, B17. So it's excellent for cancer, but it does lower the thyroid. But if you have hyperthyroid, it's excellent. The other things that have high B17 in them are almonds, cassava, yam, maize, or corn, apricots. And one of the big ways that they got Laetrile into people was ground up the apricot seeds. That was a big source of that and was used quite a bit. Prunes and bamboo shoots.
And that's good fiber too.
Yeah, great fiber. Great for hyperthyroid, but again, you have to be cautious with those with hypothyroid. Now, another thing that most people don't know is that B12 also suppresses the thyroid.
Suppresses the thyroid.
Suppresses the thyroid. So if you're taking B12 shots and you're hypothyroid, you need to be cautious on that.
Say that again. So if you're taking B12 shots and you're
hypothyroid, know that your thyroid will actually be suppressed with
which
B12.
Which is not good.
Well, which you might need the B12, but you might have to up how much you're working with your thyroid.
Okay.
So if you're taking B12 shots and you start up and you're on hypothyroid, if you're on thyroid medicine, you might have to actually add something to that. Cobalt also suppresses the thyroid, and cobalt is the main ingredient in B12. Cobalamin is what that's called. So cobalt is the main thing, and cobalt suppresses the thyroid. Vitamin D and calcium also suppress the thyroid. And a very interesting thing that, remember I told you that I was drinking a gallon of milk a day?
Yeah.
I had just a really craving for that. Well, the best way to get vitamin D and calcium into the system is milk, because they add vitamin D to the milk, and it has a 10 times absorption rate being in milk than it does in anything else. That's why they added it, and it helped to solve a very big nutritional problem, because people weren't getting enough vitamin D, and so they added it to the milk. And you're talking about these things, you're saying suppressing the thyroid, which when you have a hyperthyroid, you want to do. That's what you're wanting to do.
Okay.
Para-aminobenzoic acid, PABA, is also an excellent thyroid suppressor. So that's another different ways. Iodine. Now, iodine is very important. One, if you are too low, then the thyroid doesn't work as well, but if you take an excess amount, it'll actually lower the thyroid. Molybdenum, I say that 20 times fast. Fluorine, like fluoride. Tyramine, which is an amino acid or phenolic. L-carnitine and fatty acids. Lithium, very excellent. That's one of our main go-tos, especially lithium orotate. And then copper, it increases the estrogen, and which causes the thyroid to be depressed. And the hormones, insulin, parathyroid, thymus, and estrogen, all take the thyroid down. So those are all the different types of things that we look at and put together to find a right combination to get the Graves' disease and the hyperthyroid under control. As you can see, there's an awful lot involved in it.
And
we have a lot more options than they do pharmaceutically.
Right.
That's one of the big things that we can actually do on that to make that work for people.
So we have about 30 seconds, Dr. Prather. What should someone do if they suspect or have Graves' disease?
Well, a big thing is if you can come in to, get the lab tests done. Now, even if you have a situation where your doctor might say there's no problems, coming into a structure function doctor, they're going to be a little bit more particular, and you're going to get better answers from them.
Okay. Well, thank you.
Thank you, Lisa.
Thank you, Dr. Prather.
The Prather practice is located at 8902 North Meridian Street on the north side of Indianapolis, just south of the I-465 loop. If we can help you to achieve better health, we'd love to hear from you. Connect with our office at 317-848-8048. That's 317-848-8048. Join us again here next week or anytime on our website at thevoiceofhealthradio.com for The Voice of Health with Dr. Robert Prather.